There is a lot of bad news in the world right now, and sometimes it can be hard to appreciate when things are moving in the right direction. Or the subject of conservative politicking, and that is a great thing. That's next. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, the first out gay cabinet member confirmed by the Senate, announced this week that he and his husband Chasten have become parents, making them the most high-profile LGBTQ couple in American politics to welcome a child. Beyond its historic significance, the announcement was also significant for what didn't happen when it was made. There was almost zero conservative outrage. The RNC didn't condemn the news. Republicans didn't shout how this was the end of parenthood as we know it. It's a low bar for the GOP. Now, let's be clear. There are still a lot of intolerant conservatives who don't want LGBTQ Americans to have the same rights as them, especially when it comes to our trans brothers and sisters. And just last year, Tennessee's bigoted Republican governor signed legislation that affirmed adoption agencies that discriminated against LGBTQ couples will still get state funding. But fewer Republicans seem to be embracing those moves. Some have even expressed support for LGBTQ individuals. Politico noted this week that the RNC chairwoman's celebration of Pride Month elicited almost no shock or outrage from Republicans. Again, we don't want to overstate the case, but that's quite a progression from the 2004 presidential election, when George W. Bush campaigned on a constitutional amendment to ban same-sex marriage.
The union of a man and woman deserves an honored place in our society. I support the protection of marriage against activist judges.
Banning same-sex marriage wasn't just part of the Republican Party platform. It was the party platform. And it's a progression from even a decade ago, when Zach Walz, then a 19-year-old college student, spoke eloquently about his two mothers as he condemned an Iowa bill that aimed to end civil unions in the state.
I'm not really so different from any of your children. My family really isn't so different from yours. After all, your family doesn't derive its sense of worth from being told by the state, you're married, congratulations. No, the sense of family comes from the commitment we make to each other, to work through the hard times so we can enjoy the good ones. It comes from the love that binds us. That's what makes a family. So what you're voting here isn't to change us. It's not to change our families. It's to change how the law views us, how the law treats us.
That was a beautiful, remarkable moment. Just 10 years later, it's remarkable how unremarkable same-sex marriage is for the overwhelming majority of Americans. And it's remarkable how little the right seemed to care about the Buttigieg's announcement. Chasten told the Washington Post last month that the pair had been trying to adopt for a year without success. The Post reports, quote, Chasten thinks sometimes about what they will tell their future child. We tried so hard for you. We waited so long for you. He fantasizes about taking a little one to Michigan where they could romp through the woods and cast fishing lines with Grandpa. He won't have to fantasize much longer. And joining us now is Iowa State Senator Zach Walz. Senator Walz, thank you very much for being here. I would love for you to talk about the evolution that you've seen from how your mothers were treated 10 years ago.
Well, good evening, Jonathan. It's great to be with you to celebrate such a historic moment for the community. And to your point, it certainly is a sea change of what we've seen over the last 10 years. Even though, as you pointed out, we still have many battles that are being waged when it comes to some of the struggles that we're seeing yet today. It is good to know that when it comes to family, we are seeing non-traditional families, two moms, two dads, certainly no longer being the political wedge that they used to be. Watching that speech from President Bush in 2004 certainly brought back memories of watching that speech myself and how scared and how isolating it felt at that time, watching those words being said. And it's good to know that the secretary and Chasten's child won't have to grow up with that same kind of fear-mongering about their family.
Mm-hmm. Senator Walz, do you see any evolution in the Republican stance on LGBTQ issues? I mean, of course, there are Republicans out there who support LGBTQ equality, but the party writ large, has it evolved as much as the nation?
No, certainly not. And what you're seeing, of course, is Republican leaders responding to where the American public is. They know that the American people support marriage equality. The polling is extraordinarily clear on this. And that's because advocates were able to make the case successfully and to defend families like mine. However, the war is far from over. Right here in Iowa, we saw 15 anti-LGBT bills introduced in the most recent legislative session, 13 of them targeting the transgender community. That was tied for third most in the United States. And so even though we've seen good progress when it comes to marriage equality, we have a long ways to go with LGBT equality overall. And we know that the Republicans are leaning into the culture war, whether it's LGBTQ rights issues, whether it's voting rights, where we're continuing to see attacks right here in Iowa and across the country on these issues. We know that we have a long ways to go when it comes to protecting all families. And if any of the viewers would like to learn more, they can follow me on Twitter or visit my website, zachwalls.com, to see what's happening right here in Iowa and how they can get involved.
You know, Senator Walz, as I sit here and I think about the speech, the clip of the speech we just showed of you, and here we are in 2021, what would you say to a Zach Walz who's, 19, 18, 17, who's watching right now, who might have two parents of the same gender, who might be worried about their future, the future of their family? What words do you have for them?
It's the same thing that I would have said to the 8th grade Zach watching in 2004, which is that it gets better, but it doesn't get better on its own. It only gets better because brave people stand up and are willing to fight for the values that define their families. That's happened in the arena of LGBTQ rights for generations. And I certainly today am standing on the shoulders of giants and people who came before. And so even though it is difficult, and even though there are moments where it can feel very isolating and alone, know that it does get better, and it gets better when we work together to make that change happen. And to that 19-year-old Zach, there's a lot of work ahead of you, and you're just getting started.
And do you think, given the culture wars that we are in, and the fact that you are an elected official, how confident are you that those of us who believe in the fact that, equal justice under law and equality for all should apply to all of us, that we will be victorious in this war?
And Jonathan, it's not going to be a war that wins itself. I don't want to sound like a broken record, but the only way that we're going to win these struggles, whether it's for affirming the inherent worth and dignity of all families, including Pete and Chasten, whether it's protecting the transgender kids who are being targeted in schools across America, it's only going to be by coming together. I'm a Democrat because I believe that we all do better when we all do better. And I know that there are so many people in this country who share that vision for a more fair and prosperous America for all of us. But these things are all connected. Right here in Iowa, we've seen attacks on voting rights. We know that there is a threat against Iowa's model redistricting system, and that the scourge of partisan gerrymandering is very much a threat here in our state. And so I certainly think that we have a lot of work to do. We have to keep our shoulders to the boulder, and we just have to remember that these fights have to be won every generation. The work continues, even though we may be winning this battle, the war goes on.
Zach Walz, Iowa State Senator, thank you very much for joining us. Congratulations, Chasten and Pete. That is tonight's last word. Don't forget to catch me on the Sunday show.